against the British government, and we suddenly found that we'd passed that hurdle. Now I'll tell you this other one. How will they resolve the question when somebody thinks they've got a qualified majority vote on double-hatting the President of the Commission and the President of the European Council? The European Court of Justice has no role now, or we're told that it has no role in European foreign policy. That's been ring-fenced, that's been taken out. Well, will they go to a qualified majority vote? What happens? Parliament has been told in absolutely solemn terms by every government and all these people now that there is no way this can be done, and it's done. What do we do? Now, you don't have to be a pedantic lawyer to think this is important. It's a here and now problem, and it has to be solved. The only way I can think it can be solved is, as you may know, in getting rid of the Lords as the place of our highest appeal. We have created a Supreme, it's not a Supreme Council, was it? Supreme Court. I don't think many people realise it, but it's on the statute book. It's all due to open up in what used to be Middlesex County Hall in Parliament Square in a few months' time, years' time. Now, when we have this Supreme Court, of course it hasn't got the powers of the Supreme Court, but if it's going to live up to its historic name, and have the powers of interpretation of the Constitution that the Americans have, we have to consider the situation. Well, who believes we don't have a Constitution in this country? You all agree we do, of course. Right, good, excellent university. And that is the reality. I mean, we all used to make speeches about how we had an unwritten Constitution, Britain didn't have a Constitution. We have slowly, and it hasn't been a conspiracy, it's part of joining the membership of the European Union. As treaty amendment has built up, 5 treaty amendments in Rome since we've been members, we have gradually got a constitution. It isn't a law-embracing constitution, it doesn't cover every aspect of our life yet, but it's fast becoming that. Now, I think it is intolerable that we should continue with a situation where we bring into law in this country treaty amendments when we know that there is doubt about the value of the wording. And I'm not prepared to accept the European Court of Justice as being the arbiter of it, and anyhow, this present heads of government already ruled that out in terms of the whole area of common foreign defence policy. I think that we should give a new power to this UK Supreme Court, that all European legislation can be appealed. And the grounds for an appeal can be that the interpretation that has been put on this is different to the interpretation that was explained to Parliament and on which Parliament ratified the treaty. Now, some people will see that as explosive. Potentially, that is exactly the power that the Federal Republic of Germany currently has, and a few other countries. But I believe it's the only way that we can live with the mechanism of amending treaties as we go closer and edge closer and closer to the limits of unity within the European Union. And for those of us who believe that we wishes to remain a Europe of member states and not a United States of Europe, this is very important. And I believe if you are going to get people to go that extra mile, go close to the limits, which I think you are doing in trying to build a consensus on foreign policy, they've got to know that when they make concessions, they're not going to be taken advantage of. When the Greeks accept that, when the Cypriots accept that they will allow something to happen which they don't like, but they don't want to block everybody else, that they can do it without establishing a precedent. They can do it without being able to say, well, you gave way this time, now you will have to live with qualified majority voting. That's all it is. Now, I'm sure this is very different to what you're getting in your academic lectures about Europe, and I think I've spoken for long enough, and I will answer your questions on any aspect you like, life generally. But maybe you want to confine yourself to the subject on which I've spoken. But as you will gather, I feel very passionate. But one thing I will not accept, I'm afraid, is lectures from anyone on being committed to the European Union. I have put my whole political career, argue my ambitions, totally on the line on this issue. You don't resign from shadow office when you're young, ambitious, young 30-year-old, and then expect for it to be forgotten. I was lucky. I resigned in 1972, and Wilson appointed me Minister of Health 2 years later. I had no possible grounds for expecting it or reason for him to have done so. And I resigned, as you know, from Michael Foot's shadow cabinet, some of you may know, because I could not accept collective responsibility when he became leader of the party, because I disagreed with practically every single major policy plank on which he'd been elected. And then I left the party, not actually, although I disagreed with coming out of the European Union without a referendum, I disagreed with giving up nuclear weapons, I disagreed with Tony Benn's economic policies. I would have stayed and fought on all of those three. What I couldn't fight was when the electoral college became the mechanism for electing the leader of the Labour Party. And you've seen some of the problems of the electoral college with Peter Haines' deputy leadership election, and it gets into the main gaze of life and the whole question of unions. I hope Gordon Brown takes the unions out of the electoral college, and I hope we do go to one member, one vote in the Labour Party, because it's not a sustainable, proper adult democracy that what we're seeing there. But I say, I thought, and I hold these views, I don't disparage anyone who might get up and say, I want a full-blooded European Union, and I want a union foreign policy, and I want qualified majority voting. And I say to you now, openly, good luck to you, but you must get the permission of the British public to do it. And you mustn't allow your politicians to back off. The disgrace, the democratic disgrace, is that we were offered a referendum in the 2005 election. Now, I can well understand why some people, and the Foreign Secretary made it very clear in the debate on Monday, that he thought Tony Blair's decision to offer a referendum was ill-advised, and there was no reason for it. There was a reason. He wanted to win the 2005 election, and he wanted to take this issue out, and he wanted people to vote Labour who felt very strongly on the issue of Europe. When Nick Clegg proposed, I believe, at the Liberal Assembly, that there should be a referendum on the constitutional bill, he didn't just use the constitutional bill, he used any big major issue which affected the constitution. He did so because he wanted Liberals in the West Country, many of whom have passionate arguments against common fisheries policy, and would vote against that party if they didn't think that they had the right for a referendum. And they wanted their votes, they wanted your and my votes. And here we are now, 2.5 years after a general election, completely tearing up the referendum commitment. Well, that's not the way to win friends and influence people towards the EU when there's already a good deal of hostility. I would vote for this treaty if it came to a referendum, provided we get some other constitutional safeguards, like any major change in the treaty has to go through Parliament, all stages through a legislative process, not just one vote, held late at night with people being encouraged to go off and get paired. That's not a democratic safeguard. David Miliband and Gordon Brown would accept, and Gordon Brown's come close to this. He's said there should be a vote, but if he'll accept primary legislation, it's been another of the limits, so that it's a considered decision if you go through and make changes in the treaties. Then I personally would vote for this treaty, although I dislike it intensely. Why am I going to vote for it? Because I think there